Let's start the book. Atomic Habits. Imagine getting just 1% better at something every single day. It sounds almost too small to matter, does not it? 1%. You would not even notice the difference from one day to the next. But here is the remarkable truth at the heart of this book. If you improve by 1% each day for a year, you end up nearly 37 times better by the time the year is over. And if you get 1% worse each day, you decline almost all the way down to zero. That is the quiet, almost invisible power of small habits. And it is the entire idea behind James Clear's brilliant book, Atomic Habits. The word atomic is perfect here, and Clear chose it carefully. An atom is tiny, almost too small to see. But atoms are also the building blocks of everything around us. An atomic habit works the same way. It is a small, easy-to-do routine that, on its own, seems to mean nothing. But stack hundreds of these tiny habits together, let them compound over months and years, and they become the foundation of an extraordinary life. Small habits do not just add up. They multiply. What makes this book so different from the usual self-help advice is that James Clear is not trying to motivate you. He is not promising you a magic transformation overnight. Instead, he hands you a clear, practical, science-backed system for understanding exactly how habits work and how to build the good ones and break the bad ones on purpose. And he knows what he is talking about from painful personal experience. In his last year of high school, Clear was hit in the face with a baseball bat. The injury was devastating. He suffered a shattered nose, multiple skull fractures, swelling on the brain, and he was placed in a medically induced coma. He nearly died. His recovery was long and slow, and his promising baseball career seemed to be over before it began. With no way to transform his life in one dramatic leap, he turned to the only thing he could control: tiny daily habits, better sleep, better study routines, small visits to the gym. None of it felt significant at the time. But year by year, those small habits compounded, and he eventually became a top athlete at his university and one of the best in the country in his sport. That experience taught him the lesson that runs through this entire book, and it is one of the most important sentences you will ever hear about success. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. So over the next hour, I am going to walk you through exactly how those systems work, the science of how habits form in your brain, and the simple, powerful framework you can start using today to change your life one tiny habit at a time. Let us get into it. What you will learn. Before we dive into the key points, here is a quick look at what you are going to walk away with by the end of this video. First, you will learn why your tiny daily habits matter far more than your big, ambitious goals, and how a 1% improvement compounds into life-changing results when you give it enough time. Second, you will understand the real difference between goals and systems, and why focusing on your systems is the true secret to lasting change, while relying on goals alone quietly sets you up to fail. Third, you will discover how your habits shape your very identity, and why the most powerful and lasting change always starts with deciding the kind of person you want to become. Fourth, you will see the simple science behind how every single habit is built, through a four-step loop of cue, craving, response, and reward that drives everything you do all day long. Fifth, you will get the 4 laws of behavior change, a clear and repeatable framework you can use to make any good habit obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying. Sixth, you will learn how to break your bad habits by simply flipping those same 4 laws around. Seventh, you will walk away with a whole toolbox of practical techniques, including habit stacking, environment design, temptation bundling, the 2-minute rule, and habit tracking. And finally, you will find out how to stay motivated for the long haul, how to push through boredom, and how to keep improving so you never get stuck on a plateau. All right, that is the map. Let us begin with the first key point. Point 1. Tiny habits compound into remarkable results. The foundation of this whole book is one simple idea. Habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. We tend to believe that big success requires big action. We want the dramatic transformation, the huge breakthrough, the giant leap forward. So when we make a small change and it does not seem to do anything, we get discouraged and quit. But James Clear shows us that this is exactly backwards. The most meaningful changes come not from massive effort, but from tiny improvements repeated consistently over a long period of time. He illustrates this with the true story of the British cycling team. For nearly 100 years, British cycling had been almost embarrassingly mediocre. They had won barely anything, and at one point a top European bike manufacturer even refused to sell bikes to the team, worried it would damage their brand to be associated with such poor performance. Then a new coach named Dave Brailsford took over, and he brought a single guiding philosophy he called the aggregation of marginal gains. His idea was to find a tiny 1% improvement in absolutely everything connected to cycling. They redesigned the bike seats to be more comfortable. They rubbed alcohol on the tires for better grip. They found the pillow and mattress that gave each rider the best night's sleep. They even painted the inside of their team truck white so they could spot tiny specks of dust that might affect the bikes. None of these changes mattered much on its own. But added together and compounded over time, the results were staggering. Within just a few years, the British team began dominating the Tour de France and the Olympic Games, winning an avalanche of gold medals. It was not one big change. It was hundreds of tiny ones. Now here's the hard part, and it is the reason most people give up. The results of good habits are almost always delayed. When you start a new habit, you put in effort and you seem to get nothing back. Clear calls this the plateau of latent potential. He uses the image of an ice cube sitting in a cold room. The temperature slowly rises from 25 degrees to 26 to 27, all the way up. Nothing happens. The ice just sits there. And then, at 32 degrees, the ice begins to melt. That one final degree looks no different from all the ones before it, but it is the one that finally produces the change. All the earlier work was not wasted. It was being stored up. Habits work exactly the same way. The reason you do not see results at first is that you have not yet crossed the threshold where the value becomes visible. So, the lesson of this first point is to be patient and to trust the process, even when it feels like nothing is happening. Fall in love with the small daily routines, not just the big results. And remember that this compounding effect cuts both ways. The same power that builds you up can also tear you down. A small bad habit repeated daily, like one extra drink or one mindless hour of scrolling, compounds into disaster just as reliably as good habits compound into success. Your habits are working for you or against you right now, every single day. Point 2. Forget about goals, focus on systems instead. Here is one of the most surprising and freeing ideas in the entire book. If you want better results, then stop focusing so much on your goals and start focusing on your systems instead. Let us be clear about the difference. Goals are about the results you want to achieve. Systems are about the daily processes that lead to those results. The goal is to win the championship. The system is how you train, practice, and recover. The goal is to write a book. The system is your writing schedule. And Clear argues that while goals are fine for setting a direction, they are surprisingly useless for making actual progress. The progress comes entirely from the system. He gives several reasons why chasing goals alone tends to fail you. First, winners and losers share the exact same goals. Every single athlete at the Olympics wants to win a gold medal. The goal was the same for all of them. Because the goal cannot be what separates the winner from everyone else. It was the system underneath that made the difference. Second, achieving a goal only changes your life for a moment. If your bedroom is messy and you set a goal to clean it, you might clean it once. But the sloppy habits that made it messy are still there, you will be staring at the same messy room again next week. You treated the symptom without curing the cause. Third, goals can actually restrict your happiness because they create an either-or trap. You tell yourself you will only be happy once you reach the goal, which means you spend the entire journey feeling like you have not arrived yet. And fourth, goals can put you at odds with long-term progress. Think of the runner who trains 4 months to finish a marathon, crosses the line, and then stops running entirely because the goal is done. The purpose of setting a goal is to win the game once. The purpose of building a system is to keep playing the game forever. This brings us back to that powerful line. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Your results are simply a lagging measure of your habits. Your weight is a lagging measure of your eating habits. Your knowledge is a lagging measure of your study habits. Your bank account is a lagging measure of your financial habits. You get what you repeat. So instead of obsessing over the outcome you want, fall in love with the system of small actions that gets you there. Point 3. To change your habits, change your identity. So why is it so hard to stick with good habits, even when we really want to? James Clear says it is because most of us try to change the wrong thing, in the wrong way. And the deepest, most powerful place to start is with your identity. Clear describes 3 layers of change, like the rings of an onion. The outer layer is changing your outcomes, like losing weight or winning a competition. The middle layer is changing your processes, like building a new gym routine. But the deepest layer, the one almost nobody focuses on, is changing your identity. This is about changing your beliefs, your self-image, and the way you see yourself. Most people try to change from the outside in. They focus on what they want to achieve. But Clear says the real, lasting change works from the inside out. It starts with deciding who you wish to become. The goal is not to read a book. The goal is to become a reader. The goal is not to run a marathon. The goal is to become a runner. Why does this matter so much? Because behavior that conflicts with your sense of self will never last. If deep down you believe you are a disorganized person, no planner or app will fix it for long, because you will always drift back to match your self-image. When your behavior and your identity are in conflict, your identity almost always wins. Clear gives a small but powerful example. Imagine 2 people trying to quit smoking. When offered a cigarette, the first says, "No thanks, I am trying to quit." The second says, "No thanks, I am not a smoker." The words are almost the same, but the difference is enormous. The first person still believes they are a smoker, who is fighting their nature. The second has already changed their identity. For them, smoking simply is not who they are anymore. So how do you actually change your identity? Here is the beautiful mechanism Clear offers. Your identity is built out of your habits, one small action at a time. Every action you take is like a vote for the type of person you want to become. Each time you write a page, you cast a vote for being a writer. Each time you finish a workout, you cast a vote for being a fit and healthy person. No single vote will transform your beliefs about yourself. But as the votes pile up, so does the evidence that you are becoming a new kind of person. And the best part is that you do not need a perfect record. You just need to win the majority of the time. So decide the kind of person you want to be, and then prove it to yourself with small, repeated wins. Point 4. Understand the 4 steps of every habit. To change your habits on purpose, you first need to understand how they actually work. And James Clear shows that every single habit, no matter how big or small, follows the very same 4-step loop. This understanding goes all the way back to a psychologist named Edward Thorndike, who ran experiments with cats in the late 1800s. He placed cats inside a box that they could escape by pressing a simple lever. The first time, a cat would wander, scratch, and fumble around at random until it accidentally hit the lever and the door opened. But here is the key. Each time he put the cat back in, it got faster. After enough repetitions, the cat would walk straight to the lever and let itself out. Thorndike's conclusion became the foundation of habit science. Actions that produce satisfying results tend to get repeated, and over time they become automatic. That is really what a habit is. It is a behavior you have repeated so many times that it now happens almost automatically. And the reason your brain loves habits is that they save energy. By making routine actions automatic, your mind is freed up to focus on other things. Every habit moves through 4 stages. The first is the cue, which is the trigger that tells your brain a reward is nearby. The second is the craving, which is the desire or motivation behind the habit. Here is something important. You do not actually crave the habit itself. You crave the change in how you feel. You do not crave smoking a cigarette. You crave the feeling of relief it gives you. The third stage is the response, which is the actual habit you perform, the thought or action itself. And the fourth stage is the reward, which is the satisfaction you get at the end. The reward does two jobs. It satisfies you in the moment, and it teaches your brain whether this whole loop is worth remembering and repeating next time. Cue, craving, response, reward. This loop runs constantly, all day long, mostly without you even noticing. And from this simple loop, Clear builds the central framework of the entire book, which he calls the 4 laws of behavior change. To build a good habit, you make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. To break a bad habit, you simply do the opposite. You make it invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying. Everything that follows is a deep dive into these 4 laws, so let us take them one at a time. Point 5. The first law, make it obvious. The first law of behavior change is to make your good habits obvious. This law is all about the cue, the trigger that starts the habit. If you want a habit to stick, you have to make its trigger impossible to ignore. But before you can change a habit, you first have to become aware of it. So many of our habits are so automatic that we do not even notice them anymore. Clear points to the Japanese railway system as a wonderful example of the power of awareness. Train conductors there use a method called pointing and calling. They physically point at signals and say out loud what they see, like signal is green. It looks a little silly, but by connecting the eyes, the hands, the voice, and the mind, this simple system has reduced errors by up to 85%. Saying things out loud pulls them out of autopilot and into your conscious awareness. Once you are aware of your habits, the most effective way to make a good one obvious is to plan exactly when and where you will do it. Most people leave their habits to chance. They say, I want to exercise more, and then wonder why it never happens. The fix is a simple tool. Clear calls an implementation intention. Formula is this: I will do this behavior, at this time, in this place. For example, I will meditate for 1 minute at 7 in the morning in my kitchen. Being that specific removes the guesswork and makes the cue crystal clear. The research shows that people who write down exactly when and where they will act are far more likely to follow through. The second powerful tool here is something Clear calls habit stacking. Instead of tying a new habit to a time and place, you tie it to a habit you already do. The formula is: after I do my current habit, I will do my new habit. For example, after I pour my morning coffee, I will write down one thing I am grateful for. Or, after I take off my work shoes, I will immediately change into my workout clothes. Your existing routines become reliable triggers for the new behaviors you want to build. You are piggybacking on momentum you already have. Point 6. Design your environment for success. This idea is so important that it deserves its own point. James Clear argues that your environment is often a far more powerful force on your behavior than your motivation or willpower will ever be. He tells the story of Anne Thorndike, a doctor at a Boston hospital who wanted to improve the eating habits of thousands of staff and visitors without changing anyone's willpower and without saying a single word to them. Instead, she simply redesigned the hospital cafeteria. She added bottles of water next to the food at every station and beside the soda in every fridge, making water the easy, visible choice. Over the following months, soda sales dropped significantly while water sales rose. People changed what they drank, not because they were lectured or because they became more disciplined, but purely because their environment changed. The most obvious and convenient option became the default choice. The lesson is that we respond powerfully to what we can see. So much of what we do each day is driven not by careful decisions, but simply by what is right in front of us. So rather than relying on willpower, become a designer of your own environment. Make the cues for your good habits big, bold, and impossible to miss. If you want to practice guitar, do not hide it in a closet. Put it on a stand in the middle of your living room. If you want to drink more water, place full bottles in the spots you walk past all day. If you want to remember to take a vitamin, set the bottle right next to your coffee maker. Now, to break a bad habit, you simply flip this law around and make the cue invisible. This is one of the most practical ideas in the whole book. Instead of fighting temptation with willpower, you remove the temptation from your sight. If you watch too much television, unplug it, and take the batteries out of the remote after each use. If you eat too much junk food, the simplest solution is to stop keeping it in the house. If your phone destroys your focus, leave it in another room while you work. Clear makes a point that should comfort anyone who feels weak-willed. People with great self-control are not superhuman. They simply structure their lives so they do not need to use willpower in the first place. They spend less time around temptation. The truth is, it is much easier to avoid temptation than to resist it. Point 7. The second law, make it attractive. The second law of behavior change is to make your good habits attractive. This law is about the craving, the motivation that drives you to act. The simple truth is that the more attractive an opportunity feels, the more likely it is to become a habit. To understand why, Clear takes us into the science of dopamine, the brain chemical linked to desire and pleasure. For a long time, we thought dopamine was simply released when we received a reward, but the research reveals something more interesting. Dopamine actually spikes most strongly when we anticipate a reward before we even get it. It is the wanting, the craving, the expectation that fuels us to take action. So, if you want to build a habit, you need to make it something you look forward to, something you want before you even start. The main tool Clear gives for this is called temptation bundling. The idea is to pair an action you need to do with an action you want to do. You link a habit you are trying to build to something you already enjoy. For example, you only let yourself watch your favorite show while you are on the exercise bike, or you only listen to your favorite podcast while you clean the house. You take a craving you already have and use its energy to pull a new habit along with it. You can make this even more powerful by combining it with the habit stacking from earlier. The formula becomes, after my current habit, I will do the habit I need, and after the habit I need, I will do the habit I want. For example, after I get home from work, I will exercise for 30 minutes, and after I exercise, I will watch my favorite show. Now the whole sequence becomes something you genuinely look forward to. To break a bad habit with this law, you make it unattractive. A lot of this comes down to reframing the way you think about it. Instead of focusing on what you are giving up, focus on the benefits you gain by avoiding the bad habit. Highlight all the upside of being free from it. More energy, a clearer mind, more money, a healthier body, and the identity of the person you want to become. You point your cravings toward the life you actually want. Point 8. We absorb the habits of the people around us. There is a deeper, social side to making habits attractive, and it is powerful enough to deserve its own point. The truth is, we do not build our habits in a vacuum. We absorb them from the people around us. Clear opens with the incredible story of a Hungarian man named Laszlo Polgar, who held a radical belief that genius is not born, but made. He was convinced that with the right environment and the right habits, any child could be raised into a world-class expert. He decided to test this theory on his own 3 daughters, immersing all of them in the world of chess from a very young age. Their entire home life revolved around the game, and it became completely normal and admired in their family. The results were astonishing. All 3 daughters became elite chess players, and one of them, Judith, became the greatest female chess player in history. Their environment made an extraordinary habit feel completely normal. This works because human beings are deeply wired to fit in. Clear says we tend to imitate the habits of 3 groups in particular. We imitate the close, meaning our family and friends. We imitate the many, meaning our broader tribe or community. And we imitate the powerful, meaning people with status and success that we admire. In every case, the pull is the same. Whatever behavior is considered normal and respected in our group becomes the behavior we find most attractive, because being accepted and belonging is one of our deepest human needs. So, one of the most effective things you can do to build a habit is to join a culture. Your desired behavior is already the normal, everyday thing. If you want to read more, join a book club where reading is just what people do. If you want to get fit, surround yourself with people for whom training is a normal part of life. When the desire to fit in with your group points in the same direction as the habit you want, you are no longer fighting yourself with willpower. You are being carried along by the current of the people around you. Choosing the right environment of people may be one of the most powerful decisions you make about who you will become. Point 9. The third law: make it easy. The third law of behavior change is to make your good habits easy. This law is about the response, the action itself. And the big principle behind it is what Clear calls the law of least effort. By nature, human beings will always gravitate toward the option that requires the least amount of work. This is not a character flaw. It is just how we are wired. And once you accept it, you can use it to your advantage instead of fighting against it. But first, Clear clears up a very common mistake about how habits form. He draws a sharp line between being in motion and taking action. Being in motion is when you plan, strategize, and prepare. It feels productive, but it does not actually produce a result. Taking action is the behavior that delivers the outcome. Reading 10 books about how to lose weight is motion. Actually exercising is action. The trap is that motion lets us feel like we are making progress without ever risking failure, so we get stuck in endless preparation. He illustrates this with a great study from a photography class. The teacher split the students into two groups. One group would be graded purely on the quantity of photos they took. The other would be graded on the quality of just one perfect photo. At the end, all the best photos came from the quantity group. While they were busy actually taking hundreds of pictures and learning by doing, the quality group sat around theorizing about perfection and produced very little. Action beats motion. Reps beat planning. So how do you make a habit easy? You reduce the friction. Every habit has a certain number of steps and a certain amount of effort standing between you and the action. The more friction there is, the less likely you are to follow through. So make your good habits as low friction as possible. Lay out your gym clothes the night before. Prepare healthy meals in advance, so the easy choice is also the healthy one. Set out everything you need, so the next good action takes almost no effort to start. And to break a bad habit, you flip it around and make it difficult. You increase the friction. You add steps between yourself and the bad behavior until it is no longer worth the trouble. This is the idea behind what Clear calls a commitment device, a choice you make now that locks in good behavior later. A classic example is having part of your paycheck automatically moved into savings before it ever reaches your checking account, so you never have to find the willpower to save it. Point 10. Master the 2-minute rule. This next idea is so useful for beating procrastination that it gets its own point. James Clear calls it the 2-minute rule. He introduces it with the story of the famous choreographer Twyla Tharp. Every single morning, she wakes up, puts on her workout clothes, walks outside, and hails a taxi to take her to the gym. And here is her insight. She says the ritual is not the workout itself. The ritual is the cab. Once she is told the driver where to go, the rest takes care of itself. She made the very first step automatic, and everything else followed. That is the heart of the 2-minute rule. When you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. The idea is to scale the habit down, way down, until it is almost ridiculously easy to begin. Read every night becomes read one page. Do 30 minutes of yoga becomes take out my yoga mat. Run 3 miles becomes put on my running shoes. The full habit is the destination, but the 2-minute rule is about mastering the art of simply showing up. Why does this work so well, when 2 minutes obviously is not enough to get fit or write a book? Because the hardest part of almost any habit is the very beginning. The resistance and the dread all live at the start. Once you have started, once you are in motion, Continuing is much easier. Putting on your shoes leads naturally to going for a walk. Opening the document leads naturally to writing a sentence, and then another. By making the entry point tiny, you sneak past your own resistance. There is a deeper truth here too. A habit has to exist before it can be improved. You cannot improve a habit you do not yet have. So the 2-minute rule is really about first becoming the kind of person who shows up consistently, who never misses the start. Master the art of showing up, and then you can slowly build from there. Standardize before you optimize. Point 11. The fourth law, make it satisfying. The fourth and final law of behavior change is to make your good habits satisfying. This law is about the reward, and it answers the big question of what makes a habit actually stick over the long term. Clear puts it as a simple rule. What is immediately rewarded gets repeated, and what is immediately punished gets avoided. To show how powerful satisfaction is, Clear tells the story of a researcher named Stephen Luby, who worked in the crowded, impoverished neighborhoods of Karachi, Pakistan, where poor hand-washing was spreading disease. The problem was not a lack of knowledge. People already knew hand-washing mattered. The problem was that washing simply was not satisfying, so people did it inconsistently. So Luby's team introduced a premium soap that lathered beautifully and smelled wonderful. Suddenly, washing hands became a small, genuinely pleasant experience. And the results were dramatic. Disease rates fell sharply, and years later, the vast majority of households were still washing their hands. The habit stuck because it felt good. This is the same reason we keep brushing our teeth with minty toothpaste. The fresh, tingly feeling gives us an immediate little reward. Here is the core challenge this law solves. The first 3 laws make a behavior more likely to happen this time. But this fourth law is what makes it likely to be repeated next time. The problem is that there is a mismatch in timing built into us. With good habits, the cost comes now and the reward comes later. You sweat at the gym today, but the fit body shows up months from now. With bad habits, it is the reverse. The reward is immediate, and the cost is delayed. The donut tastes great right now. The weight gain comes later. Clear explains that our brains evolved to crave immediate rewards, which is why we are naturally pulled toward instant gratification. So the solution, when a habit's real reward is far off in the future, is to give yourself a small, immediate reward now, to bridge the gap. The one rule is that the reward must not contradict your identity. Rewarding a hard workout with a tub of ice cream sends the wrong message. But relaxing in a hot bath or moving a little money into a savings account you care about can work beautifully. And to break a bad habit, you make it unsatisfying by adding an immediate cost. The most effective tool here is bringing other people into it through an accountability partner or a habit contract. When you make your habit public and attach a real, immediate penalty for slipping, the bad behavior suddenly becomes painful right now, not just someday. We care deeply about what others think of us, so having someone watching becomes a powerful deterrent. Clear himself wrote a habit contract with his wife and his trainer, with real consequences for breaking it, and it kept him on track when his own willpower wavered. Point 12. Track your habits and never miss twice. A natural extension of that fourth law is habit tracking, and it is one of the most reliable ways to make a habit feel satisfying, so it gets its own point. A habit tracker is simply any way of measuring whether you did your habit, like crossing off an X on a calendar each day. It seems almost too simple to matter, but it works because it hits several of the laws at once. It is obvious because the tracker itself reminds you to act. It is attractive because watching your streak grow is motivating, and you do not want to break the chain. And it is satisfying because the simple act of marking the day done gives you an immediate little hit of progress you can see. Do not break the chain turns the whole thing into a game you want to keep winning. But Clear is realistic. Life happens. You will get sick. You will travel. An emergency will throw off your perfect day, and eventually the chain will break. So he offers what might be the single most important rule for staying consistent. Never miss twice. Missing once is just an accident. It is life. It is forgivable. But missing twice is the start of a new unwanted habit. The danger was never the single slip-up. The danger is the downward spiral that can follow, where one missed day becomes two, then a week, then total collapse. So the moment you slip, get right back on track. Even doing a tiny version of the habit on a bad day keeps your identity intact and keeps you in the game. Perfection is not the goal. Consistency over time is. Clear adds one important warning here. Be careful that the number you are tracking does not become the only thing you care about. When we obsess over a measurement, we can start gaming it and lose sight of the real goal it was supposed to serve. The tracker is a useful tool, but never let it become the master. Keep it in service of the outcome that actually matters. Point 13. Stay motivated with the Goldilocks rule. So let us say you have built a good habit. How do you stay motivated for months and years without burning out or simply getting bored? This is where Clear introduces the Goldilocks rule. The Goldilocks rule says that humans feel the most motivated when they are working on a task that is right at the edge of their abilities. Not too easy, not too hard, but just right, like Goldilocks and her porridge. When a task is too easy, we get bored. When it is too hard, we get discouraged and want to quit. But when it is perfectly balanced, just challenging enough, it pulls us in and keeps us engaged. This is exactly why video games are so addictive. They are masterfully designed to keep ramping up the difficulty in perfect step with your growing skill, so you are always being tested at just the right level. The practical takeaway is to gradually increase the challenge of your habits as you improve, so they stay interesting instead of going stale. And this leads to a hard but important truth. The greatest threat to your success is not failure. It is boredom. As any habit becomes routine, it naturally becomes less exciting and less novel. And it is at exactly this point, when things get boring rather than hard, that most people quietly drift away from their goals. Anyone can stay motivated when something is new and thrilling. The real test comes later. Clear puts it perfectly. The difference between professionals and amateurs is that professionals stick to the schedule even when the work is boring, especially when it is boring. Amateurs let life and mood and the loss of novelty get in the way. Professionals show up no matter how they feel. Nobody really likes to hear this, because we have been sold the idea that success should feel exciting and passionate all the way through. But the reality is that mastery requires falling in love with the boredom, with the simple act of doing the reps again and again, even when no one is watching and there is no applause. The ability to keep showing up when it is no longer exciting is what truly separates those who achieve lasting success from those who keep starting over. Point 14. The downside of habits and path to mastery. We come now to the final point, and it is a balanced one, because James Clear is honest enough to admit that habits also have a downside. Understanding it is the key to never getting stuck. Here is the problem. The very thing that makes habits so useful, their automatic nature, is also their hidden trap. Once a behavior becomes fully automatic, we stop paying attention to it. We stop noticing our small mistakes, and we stop looking for ways to get better. Habits make us efficient, but they can also make us complacent. We lock in a good enough version of a skill and then coast, sometimes for years, without ever improving. Repetition alone, past a certain point, just locks in mediocrity. So how do you keep growing instead of plateauing? Clear's answer is a simple equation. Habits plus deliberate practice equals mastery. Habits and deliberate practice work together. Habits handle the foundation by making the basics automatic, which frees up your attention to focus on the next, harder level. But to actually keep improving, you have to regularly pull a skill back out of autopilot and into your focused attention, measure it honestly, find the weak spots, and work to improve them. Mastery is a cycle. You master one small element until it becomes a habit, then you turn your full attention to the next element, and you repeat that process over and over. To support this, Clear recommends building in regular reflections so your habits do not quietly drift away from your goals. He does an annual review at the end of each year, asking what went well, what went poorly, and what he learned. And he does a mid-year check he calls an integrity report, where he asks whether his habits still line up with his values and the person he wants to be. This honest review keeps your habits from slowly hardening into something that no longer serves you. And this brings us full circle, back to identity. Our habits shape our identity, and our identity then reinforces our habits. That loop is powerful, but Clear gives us one last warning. Do not let your sense of self become too rigidly tied to one single identity, because then you become fragile. The athlete whose entire identity is being an athlete is shattered by an injury, which is almost exactly what happened to Clear with that baseball bat. So keep your identity flexible and broad. Do not let anyone's belief about yourself become so important that losing it would break you. The book ends on a freeing thought. Success is not a finish line you cross and then you are done. It is a system to keep improving, an endless process to enjoy and refine. The real secret to results that last is to simply never stop making small improvements. Because tiny habits do not just add up, they compound. And that is what makes a 1% improvement so powerful. These small routines are the building blocks of remarkable results. They are atomic. So that is Atomic Habits by James Clear. If you take away just one thing from this whole hour, let it be this. You do not need to transform your life overnight, and you do not need to depend on fragile bursts of willpower or motivation. What you need is a system. Make your good habits obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying. Make your bad habits invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying. Design your environment so the right choice is the easy choice. Cast a vote every single day for the person you want to become. Be patient through the quiet stretch where it feels like nothing is happening, because something is. And when you slip up, just remember the one rule that protects everything. Never miss twice. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. So go build a system you can be proud of, one tiny, atomic habit at a time. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. If this summary helped you, you know what to do to support the channel. And until next time, go get 1% better today.